Are the Washington Commanders playing with fire? Terry McLaurin says he's ready to lead. The front office is betting that they can wait him out without burning down the locker room. That and more coming up right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I am David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders, doing it here with you 5 days a week, but also covering the Commanders locally for WUSA9.com, as well as for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today. And whether you're an everydayer or you're just passing through, I appreciate you all the same. But to those everydayers, those of you who come through for every single episode, a special thank you goes out to every single one of you. And if you haven't already, anybody out there, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's episode. If this is your first time to the program, obviously some big topics to talk about, so I understand why you're out there looking for information, opinions, and analysis. I'm glad that you found us here at Locked On Commanders. Hopefully you enjoy what you hear and you come back again real soon. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to discuss the risk of losing the locker room and where McLaurin's value stacks up in today's market. But first, why Washington won't pay for what Terry McLaurin has already earned. All of that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Just last weekend, my wife and I, thanks to Game Time, went to New York Yankees game. Got to go to Yankee Stadium for the first time ever. Definitely highly recommend utilizing the app because I am a customer myself. The Commanders aren't questioning Terry McLaurin's legacy. They just don't appear willing to pay for it. I think that's really kind of the bottom line here. Terry McLaurin is going to play in 2025. I believe he's going to play for the Washington Commanders, but the Commanders front office appears to be refusing to pay for past value. Terry McLaurin wants to be paid for leadership, loyalty, and durability. And don't necessarily disagree or not, necessarily see where he's coming from, but his own words, speaking to media on Tuesday afternoon, really just kind of highlighted that these are some of the main sticking points. When you read between the lines, pick up what Terry McLaurin is really kind of harping on with his frustrations about the team and the negotiations. It just seems like that's the message I'm picking up. One of the things, quote, when things were adverse, when there was a lot of chaos going on, I held firm, I held strong, I held my head high, and I was a leader. I'm going to continue to do that, end quote. Another quote, when you have that type of production, when you know how people value you and see you and have told you to your face, and then you see how it's progressed up until this point, that's very disappointing, end quote. Terry McLaurin also talked about the market, how it talks about the guys who are playing the caliber that he is deserving of, why he fits in that box, how he carries himself both on and off the field. Also, Terry McLaurin also said, quote, I don't want to feel like you have to beg for someone to see your worth and value. Everything in previous regimes, and now I've done everything asked of me, end quote. And ultimately, Terry McLaurin said he feels a little bit disrespected by the way this Washington Commanders front office, led, of course, by general manager Adam Peters, has kind of handled things. He says that they have to do what's best for the team. Obviously, Terry McLaurin understands that. But Terry also says, quote, I know what I bring to a team, and I feel I've proven that day in, day out, I have to stand on my worth and my value, end quote. And listen, like man to man, human to human, there's a lot of things about what Terry McLaurin is saying that I agree with. I think he stands on business. I think he's represented this organization very well during some very chaotic times and some times where it wouldn't be very easy to represent this organization very well. I think he's had a lot of room and a lot of opening to complain, to be woe is me, to be angry, and he never took advantage of them. I can remember a couple of times where he kind of got close. Like there was the one game when Eric Bieniemy was the offensive coordinator where he said, well, I got a lot of cardio in today. That was like the closest that Terry McLaurin ever got to complaining or openly criticizing or being disgruntled until Tuesday. So I think it's a very significant shift. But Adam Peters, I believe, and I went on Danny and Grant on 106.7, The Fan on Tuesday afternoon and talked about this very topic. I don't think Adam Peters is interested in paying Terry McLaurin for what he's done in the past. He's only interested in paying him for what he's going to do in the future. And part of that future includes Terry McLaurin turning 30 years old. Because remember, we're talking about an extension here. Not usually, it's not impossible, but typically, like you look at the Garrett Wilson deal, right? The Garrett Wilson deal that dropped on Monday that has all kinds of guaranteed money on it and everything else is an extension. Garrett Wilson still has 2 years left on his rookie deal. That new contract, all that new money you just heard of, that starts 3 years from now. 3 seasons from now is when that contract starts. So right now it's a top 10 deal. By the time that contract actually starts being paid out, it could be a top 15 deal by that time, the way the market is kind of going, right? So Adam Peters just doesn't look to me like he's wanting to commit top money, top 10, top 5 for projected declining years. And that unfortunately is what the projections say for Terry McLaurin. More on that here in just a little bit. And I believe that Adam Peters is more than willing to let this current deal expire and decide if new money is really warranted in the next offseason. And the evidence of that is Terry McLaurin himself saying that there has been no conversation between his camp and the Washington Commanders, or at least himself and the Washington Commanders. Like, he didn't specifically say my agent hasn't talked to the team, but he did say that he hasn't heard anything from the team in over a month. And if you're Adam Peters and you're the Washington Commanders front office and you really want to get an extension done with Terry McLaurin, I don't think you're going to let a whole month go by with no conversation, right? So if that is in case the situation where it's not just Terry not hearing from the front office, it's also Terry's agent not hearing from the front office, then I kind of lean towards thinking that Adam Peters is basically willing to kind of play chicken and call Terry's bluff and say, look, dude, you have a contract. You're under contract for 2025 with the Washington Commanders. Play it or don't play it. That's your decision, but you're not going to corner me into giving you something that I don't feel right giving you. And a lot of that is going to have to do with the age. It's not Terry's production, 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons, double-digit touchdowns last year. It's not his leadership. Leadership is unquestioned, and I think that you can dip into the past and look at who he's been as a leader, who he was last year as a leader. And Terry did acknowledge the age thing, okay, up front, but he also kind of dismissed the age thing, said, quote, I'm not dismissing age completely. There are data points to support that. We've got those data points. But how come it's not okay to say this may be a different case? And based on what he's proven, showing no signs of deterioration, I feel that should be acknowledged as well. End quote. He also said, quote, people make it seem like I need to start getting fitted for a walker and a cane. My game is going to mature in a great way. End quote. As someone who has had to walk with a cane, I totally get where Terry's coming from here. Terry also pointed out, very, very good point. Quote, I'm the same guy just in January was able to take a slant in the NFC Championship game and a screen for a touchdown. I don't think that changes in 6 months, especially without no major injuries. End quote. Again, all really good points made by Terry McLaurin. And I totally get where Terry McLaurin is coming from. But I think that from a front office standpoint, where Adam Peters is the sticking point to this whole thing probably is you're wanting to be paid like you're the unicorn. The problem is if we pay you like you're the unicorn and you turn out to be just like everybody else, we're going to be the ones left holding the bag. You're not going to give that money back, nor would we ask you to get, well, actually, they might ask them to get that money back. You're not going to give that money back, but you're going to ask us to give it to you up front. And again, you're asking them to commit to it in the season. You're going to turn 30, not even, and you're already going to be committed to that money. Again, this is new money we're talking about. This is money that's going to start getting paid out in 2026. When Terry is 30, will be turning 31 in September of 2026 season. The new money he wants today, based on previous production, based on what he's going to do as a 29-year-old, won't start getting paid until he's a almost 31-year-old. And the projected production arc, right, using True Media, we got our Cynthia Freeland on. Shout out to Cynthia Freeland of NFL.com. We did some algorithms. We did some mathing. We did some True Media data sorting. And what we came up with is a production arc. It's a projected production arc. It is not a prediction. It certainly is not set in stone. But from 2025, this year, to 2029, 2029 is Terry McLaurin's 29-year-old season. Look, he turns 30 in September. I understand that. But the way that the data gets sorted is how old are you on September 1st? Terry McLaurin will be 29. So because of that, this is his 29-year-old season. The projection for this season, 80 catches, 1,009 yards, 7.8 touchdowns, top 30 receiver. Good stuff. Age 30, 2026, 74 catches, 856 yards, 4.6 TDs, top 50 receiver. Okay, decent. Next season, 2027, 41 catches, 440 yards, 3.2 touchdowns. Now you're talking about being outside the top 50, 32, you're outside the top 50 again. And the numbers, the algorithms do say that a lot of times there's kind of a bounce back season right around 33 where Terry could come back into that top 50 range. But if we're talking about paying Terry McLaurin top 10 annual average value money now, the production arc for players entering their 29-year-old season going into the next 4 seasons after that, because if we talk about a 4-year extension, again, 29-year-old season, 2025, this is the last year on his current deal. A 4-year extension takes you into his 30, 31, 32, and 33-year-old seasons. And you see that projected production arc, and this is based off of previous wide receiver productions, guys like A.J. Green, Julio Jones, guys who were at the top of the league at one point. These are based on those types of projections, not just those guys, but just 2 big names that you can take away from. The sticking point here is McLaurin wants to be paid for what he has meant to this franchise. I get it. Adam Peters is only wanting to pay for what's next. I also get that. If Washington won't pay for the past, then what exactly is Terry McLaurin worth right now? Now, how far off are the 2 sides in dollars and logic? That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, waiting in some virtual queue, hoping for that your spot holds, only to miss out on tickets to the show you've been looking forward to all year long. Kind of like waiting for a deal that never comes. Sound a little bit familiar right now. With Game Time, getting into your favorite concert or live event is actually easier the longer you wait. No holdouts, no guesswork, just last-minute ticket deals that can save you up to 60% with prices that drop as it gets closer to showtime. Forget scrolling forever. Game Time's zone deals pick the best seats in your section automatically. You even get to see your view before you buy it, so you know exactly what you're getting into. No surprises, no hidden fees, just the price you see, guaranteed. And if something changes, Game Time's guarantee has your back with cancellation protection. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Terry McLaurin isn't asking to reset the market. He's asking to stop being treated like a replaceable part in a system that honestly wouldn't function as well without him. The bottom line is the Washington Commanders offense without Terry McLaurin is not going to hit its ceiling as far as potential is concerned in 2025. There's no wide receiver number 1 out there on the market that is going to come in and do what Terry McLaurin can do. You're not going to trade him for a receiver that's going to do what he's going to do. So if you don't have Terry McLaurin on the field, then your offense is going to be incredibly handcuffed. Look, we saw what an offense looks like when Deebo Samuel is your number 1 wide receiver in San Francisco last year. Not good. And that's not a knock on Deebo. I've said it here on the program every day as you remember me saying this. Deebo Samuel was never intended to be a number 1 wide receiver. He's always supposed to be a tool, a force multiplier. Well, to multiply forces, you have to have forces. Terry McLaurin is your force. Brandon Ayuk is your force. Christian McCaffrey is your force. When you don't have those guys on the field, your force multipliers have nothing to multiply. And when you multiply nothing by 1, it's nothing. Right? So that's just kind of the bottom line on that. So the Washington Commanders need Terry McLaurin on the field. Terry McLaurin needs to be on the field because push come to shove, whether he's trying to convince the Washington Commanders to give him a better deal or whether he's trying to convince other teams to give him a better deal than the Commanders trying to give him this season, next offseason, he needs to be on the field to do it. Because if he is not on the field, getting ready to turn 31 this time next year, he's not going to get the money that probably the Commanders are even offering him right now. If they've even made an offer, honestly, we haven't heard of an offer being made. We've just heard of conversations being had. So the model extension based on value, based on the production arc, based on no emotion, based on it actually is based a little bit on leadership, right? So again, we went algorithming. We got our Cynthia Freeland going. And the deal that got spit out surprised me. So it might surprise some of you because it definitely surprised me. And actually, this episode is dropping later than was supposed to because I had to recalculate, make sure all the data points were in correctly before I brought this back up because this surprised me. You guys know it every day. I'm not backing off this. What did I say the floor was for Terry McLaurin's deal? In my opinion, should be 32.5 annual average value new money. According to the model, the annual average value on a reasonable contract, this is not overpaying, this is not underpaying, this is a reasonable contract for Terry McLaurin, is new deal, accounting for the fact that this new deal will begin in his 30-year-old NFL season, is 4 years, $80 million, $20 million annual average value. That's about 6.5, 6.8% of the salary cap. $42 million in total guarantees, $26 million fully guaranteed at signing, which would rank today the 23rd ranked annual average value wide receiver in the National Football League. By this time next year, 27th, 28th, probably. By the way, Bobby Wagner's annual average value right now, a walking Hall of Famer, 35th among all NFL linebackers. I only bring that up to kind of reinforce Adam Peters is not here to pay you for what you have done in the past. At least that's not the way it's observing. That's not the way it's presenting. These are not Adam Peters' words. This is just how I'm reading the tea leaves. If he was going to pay you for what you've done in the past, Bobby Wagner is a walking Hall of Famer. Bobby Wagner is the quarterback of the defense. Bobby Wagner is, the Media Good Guy Award winner. Bobby Wagner's been with Dan Quinn, Joe Wade Jr. He's invaluable to them, irreplaceable to them. Bobby Wagner's annual average value, 35th in the National Football League. So this is not about paying people for their legacy. It's about paying their people for what they can do today. A front-loaded structure on that contract allows the team to manage for the aging curve that was you just talked about. That contract value, his contract value currently is 17th among wide receivers. He's certainly not going to want to take a deal that lowers his annual average value, right? When you look across the board at the top 10s and wide receiver annual average value, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson in his new deal, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill's deal is old. Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, what do they all have in common? They're all younger than Terry McLaurin. And even Brandon Ayuk, remember he signed that deal before he got injured. Believe me, that deal will not be the same if it was now. And I think a little bit, honestly, Adam Peters is probably looking back at San Francisco, looking at John Lynch and seeing how John eventually caved to his number one wide receiver and is probably regretting it a little bit right now. Cap tier context. 2025 salary cap, $279.2 million overall. Elite wide receivers today, right now, are making about 12 to 14% of that team's salary cap space. So that'd be about $34 to $40 million annual average value. So if you expected Terry McLaurin to be elite moving forward in this new deal, that's about the numbers you would be at, which is a little bit of where we put it. Wide receiver number one, $30 to $33 million, 11% of the salary cap, which is the window that we put him in. Wide receiver one. Wide receiver two, 25 to 28 million. And Terry McLaurin is sitting at 22.8 million annual average value, 6 to 7% veteran wide receiver 2/3 range. But again, you front load the money. And for that first year, Terry's making wide receiver one money. That second year, he's making top end wide receiver two money. And then the third, fourth year, he's making that veteran 6 to 7% of the salary cap money, to where the team has the option to basically get out of it if they want to. So again, looking at that production arc, if you're talking about starting this deal next season, the production arc, given the history of receivers his age, and given the history of receivers who have produced at a similar rate to Terry before hitting this age window, AJ Green, Julio Jones are two of the biggest names that come up. The projections are clear. 74 catches, 856 yards, 41 catches, 440, 48 catches, 454. They're not justifying elite wide receiver money. So again, 4 years, $80 million, annual average value, $20 million. Again, very, very far off from what I was projecting. Very, very far off from what I know some other people on this beat were projecting. And if Terry wants what we were projecting, 32.5 million annual average value or better, and the Commanders are coming in, even if they're giving him a legacy bump and saying, okay, your production arc and a legacy bump will give you 22.5, 23, was still really far away, right? Still really far away. So some other points here. Terry McLaurin has been frustrated. This is where he's kind of drawing the line in the sand, right? Quote, I've been pretty frustrated, I'm not going to lie. Everything that has transpired up until this point has just been disappointing and frustrating. End quote. Said that to see the way things playing out they are has been incredibly disappointing. He understands the business side, but he also feels like he deserves some of the stuff that he's getting. No contact in over a month was really a shocking thing for me to hear Terry McLaurin say. But make no mistake about it, Terry also said, quote, I want to be here. I want to make that abundantly clear, end quote. However, he also said, quote unquote, it takes two to tango, and he's absolutely right. Terry McLaurin's not demanding a trade. He just wants clarity. Quote, up until this point, my understanding is I'm a big part of what they want to continue to build here. I just want them to be clear with me and honest if they see me as a part of this future or not. End quote. Quote, I just want clarity. You know what I mean? If they don't feel like I'm a part of their future, then okay, just tell me that. I'm a grown adult. I can handle hard truths. End quote. I think the truth is they want Terry McLaurin to be a future part of this team. I just don't think they're willing to pay him elite wide receiver money because of what he's been over paying him declining contract money because of what he's probably going to be. McLaurin, like I said, my opinion, he's going to play in 2025. He's going to play for the Washington Commanders. I'm getting less and less confident that a contract is going to get done and more confident that the resolution is going to be Terry playing on an expiring contract 2025. I don't think Adam Peters is going to bid against himself with a wide receiver turning 30 before his current deal expires. And without a long-term solution, Terry McLaurin could be looking at a franchise tag scenario in 2026. If the front office keeps dragging its feet, the real cost won't be cap space. It'll be losing the locker room leader everyone else already sees as irreplaceable. McLaurin has gone from patient to appointed, and while he's not out, the clock is ticking. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Terry McLaurin might be suiting up this fall, but if Washington keeps playing the long game, they're risking a franchise tag or a trade demand and a fracture with a star player that may not be repairable when it all comes down to it. And at the end of the day, Terry McLaurin's teammates are backing him up. Terry McLaurin said he talked to some of his teammates, said, quote, they've communicated that they've missed me. They communicated that they want me out there, but they also understand it's a business as well. And they understand what I bring to the table, and they're supporting me and standing firm in that, end quote. Jeremy Reeves, while videos of this interview were getting tweeted out, retweeted one, quote, tweeted one, I think it was from JP, and said, quote, the proof on the tape and how you show up to work every day. You one of 117 always have been family, end quote. Jeremy Reeves certainly having his receivers back. The disconnect between internal praise and actual commitment is something that was brought up. Terry said, quote, all year you feel like you're a part of something. You earned the right to be a captain. You were selected by your teammates and coaches. And when you have that type of production, when you know how people value you and see you and have told you to your face, and then you see how it's progressed up until this point, that's very disappointing. It's obviously the compensation, but it's kind of like the confusion. I'm just trying to get some clarity. Shoot it to me straight, end quote. And again, I think that's where the disconnect is coming from. I think Terry wants to be paid for what he's been, what he's done, kind of who he is as a man. And Adam Peters is trying to be the smart general manager and say, I don't pay you to be a great man. I don't pay you to be a leader in the locker room. I pay you to be a productive wide receiver. And I pay you to be a productive wide receiver in the contract that I'm going to give you. Again, that starts in 2026 when you're already 30. You're about to turn 31. And if you want a 4-year extension, again, and I'm just saying a 4-year extension just because I think that's probably where Terry's mind is. If you want a 4-year extension, it's not going to come with the money that you want. If no extension is reached, then the 2026 path gets really complicated. Terry said, quote, hopefully they see that value and they make that a priority, get some finality to this one way or another, end quote. He also said, quote, I guess you can say there is a point of no return. I don't think it's at that now, but time is kind of ticking, end quote. Ironically enough, the thumbnail on our episode before this one was the clock is ticking. So we're on the same page there, Terry and us. Terry McLaurin, like I said, I think he's going to play this season. From the sounds of it, man, I'll tell you, man, like just hearing him talk, it sounds like they're not even close. And they're not even talking, according to Terry, for the last month. They've got a week before Terry's supposed to be in training camp. I don't know what's going to happen. I will tell you this. I think if they're playing chicken, I think if Adam Peters is saying, look, you're either going to take a deal that's not what you're wanting, like $32.5 million annual average value. That's what I think he wants. And you're going to play this year on an expiring contract. And then we'll talk after the season based on your production, based on what we see moving forward. Or you're going to sit out the year. Your contract will expire. But Terry knows this business. His agent knows this business. You can't turn 30, sit out the season, make no money, be about to turn 31, and think you're going to go out there and get top receiver money. It's just not going to happen. And you request a trade, the team, quite honestly, could trade him right away and say, you know what? Okay, we'll trade you. And we'll let somebody else pay you that money. And we'll let somebody else ignore the production arc projections. We'll let somebody else pay you for what you've meant to the Washington Commanders. And we'll get draft capital for you. And then next year we'll go out there and we'll go draft, I don't know, another wide receiver. Or they can wait till the trade deadline. Let them sit out the entire time, trade them to a contender at the trade deadline, someone who's willing to go out there and give them up. There's a lot of different things here. But I think there's also a cultural risk that the Washington Commanders are taking. I think the end game here, when you hear Terry McLaurin talk about my teammates this, been told this, usually you're talking about coaches. You're talking, and certainly you're talking about Adam Peters as well, and Lance Newmark and all those guys, right? But the coaches are not negotiating. The teammates are not negotiating, right? So a lot of this conversation is quite honestly about things that probably don't really hold water at the negotiating table. The fact that you're a team captain, the fact that you were a great soldier for this organization during a really bad time, the fact that you've been productive leading up to now, the fact that you might be productive this season, you're already under contract for this season. None of that honestly holds a lot of water. The fact that Austin Eckler said we're not taking a team-friendly deal. The fact that Jeremy Reeves said your proof is on the tape. It's all true. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not disagreeing with any of it. I just don't think from a pure emotionless negotiating standpoint that it holds a lot of water. But there is a cultural risk here because players pay attention to this kind of stuff. This isn't just about 2025. It's about whether the Commanders see Terry McLaurin as a foundational piece or as a fading asset. And a foundational piece, what's a foundational piece? How long does a foundational piece need to be playing at a top level to be considered a foundational piece? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 years? If it's 5 years or more, can you honestly look at Terry McLaurin turning 30 this September and say 5 years from now, he is still going to be one of the top receivers in the NFL? If he is, he would be about the first, if not the first, 35-year-old receiver to be one of the top in the NFL. It's just not ever happened. I think that's part of the problem. I think that's part of the sticking point here. That's going to do it for today's episode, folks. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we're going to open up the mailbag. We'll be 1 week away before training camp begins, so we're going to field some more questions before we get to that point. Certainly, some of them probably going to have to do with Terry McLaurin, and maybe some of them have to do with that annual average value, which, again, remember, I predicted what a lot of you predicted. The algorithm, the math, the production arc, all that stuff, the history, predict something different. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, you want to participate in the mailbag, all you got to do is text me directly, and you can do that by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to do that today. While everyone is focused on roster battles and contract drama, it's time to see how the league's best actually stack up. The Locked On NFL Top 100 drops on Wednesday, July 16th at 10 a.m. Eastern on Locked On Sports Today, voted on by Locked On NFL hosts who cover these players every day. There are some real surprises and a few Commanders you'll want to keep an eye on, so don't miss it. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And to the everydayers, I see you. I appreciate you. And I thank you every single day. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.